Chapter 9 Gathering Information. Arturia was escorted to the library by Reinhard. He taught Arturia about how to read each character with extraordinary easy explanations which made Arturia understand them in a matter of minutes. Maybe her new body has that high spec, but naturally, Reinhard's way to teach her is having a big influence. When the sun has come out from the horizon, around 2 hours into studying, Arturia's stomach rumbled. She was hungry, she forgot to eat anything yesterday because she had a long day. Reinhard, who heard the rumbling that came from Arturia's stomach, has a look of realization. How did he forget about a simple thing such as a meal? He quickly stood up from the chair that he used to sit in when he taught Arturia and said, "I will ask the cook to make us something. I am sorry that I forgot about the breakfast. How do you like your meal, milady?" Arturia looked at Reinhard with a shy face and said, "Something that could fill my stomach is enough. I have no preference in food." Reinhard nodded his head and said, "I will bring the food immediately, milady. Please just wait here." He turned around and walked away. But before he left the room, Arturia stopped her. "Ah, Sir Reinhard." Reinhard stopped on his track and turned to look at Arturia. "Yes?" Arturia with a fidgeting finger looked shyly at Reinhard and said, Please bring a lot of it. I have a rather big appetite." Reinhard was smiling as he looked at Arturia. "Certainly, as your command." He turned around once again and left the room. Arturia, who was left alone in the library, was back to her book. She had noted all word that was used to write in this world, and she understand all of them. She thought that it was time to find more information about this world. That's why Arturia stood from her seat and tried to find a drawing book or story for children. The reason why she started with a story for children is simply that she need to know about the basics first before she went to the complicated one. Children's book was made to make it easier for children to understand the information within the book. It was perfect for Arturia, who don't know about anything in this world. After walking through a shelf of books, Arturia finally found a book. She read the title and it said Covenant with Dragon Volcanica. The book made her curious, especially because dragon was involved. Dragons are considered as the pinnacle of phantasmal species in her favorite work. Is the dragon in this world also considered the apex of the species? Is it strong? She is curious about it. Arturia herself has a dragon heart that acted as her core, pumping mana inside her body. That's why she's interested in the dragon that made a covenant with this kingdom. She walked back to her seat and opened the book. It was a children's story, but it has nothing similar to a drawing. It's a bit bland to be a children's story, but it was enough for Arturia. The book was about a kind dragon, the dragon that helped to slay the rampaging Witch of Envy roughly 400 years ago with the help of the great sage Flugel, his apprentice Shala, and the first sword saint Reed Astria. Arturia was surprised when she read the name Astria in the book, as it was the family name of her knight. So she managed to get support from a famous person, or at least a person from a famous family. She was happy that Reinhard decided to become her knight, but it was now a burden for her to take. If she has a famous and strong knight, then she must be worthy to be his king. She decided, she will do her best to become a proper king. She remembered one of Arturia Lily's abilities, Journey of the Flowers. A blessing for the princess knight who began walking on the path to be a king. She could feel herself getting filled with hope as soon as she accepted Reinhard's vow. She wanted to answer his vow, and she will do it. Although she didn't know anything, she believes in her knight. She believes that he will help her in her need, that's why Arturia wasn't worried about anything, for now. Arturia closed the book and placed it back on its shelf. She began searching for the next book that she thought was important knowledge. An Introduction of Magic. She managed to find it almost immediately, near the shelf of the Covenant with Dragon Volcanica. She read the book, and to her surprise, the magic system is different from what she used. It was similar but different. They gathered the mana from the environment, not using the mana from their own body. All this time, Arturia utilized the mana inside her body, the mana that she got from the environment and stored inside her body. While the magus, or they call it magician in this world, was using the mana from the environment directly. They need something called gate to be opened in their body. It was called gate for some reason, but it allowed mana to pass through the body and be stored in the OD. Now, this confused Arturia further. The OD that she know was similar to OD described in this world. But, using OD in this world is like using your own lifespan, according to the book. Mana in this world originated from OD Laguna, the world's OD. So, all of it was similar to what she know from Fate, but the way they work is different. OD Laguna is something like ley lines according to her understanding, while OD is the same as OD that she knew. Mana is the same, but it works differently. While the Magus used magical circuits to circulate mana in their body, they were using gate in this world. Understanding the basic principle of how magic works, Arturia put the book back on the shelf. At that time, the door of the library was opened and Reinhard brought trays with his hands and said, "Let's rest and have breakfast, milady." Arturia looked back at Reinhard and smiled. "I've been waiting for it." Chapter 10, Walking Around. They had a meal together and Reinhard was surprised by Arturia's appetite. As she said, she had a really big appetite, she even asked for more after she finished her meal. After their meal was over, Reinhard excused himself because he needs to report about Arturia's candidacy to the Sage Council as well as pick her insignia at the castle. He left a message telling Arturia could do as she please in the mansion, or she could also go take a walk around the capital. The reason why Reinhard was not worried about her was because he saw her strength. That's why he believed that Arturia could protect herself in the capital city. Arturia was grateful to Reinhard because he took care of her daily need. Not only that, he didn't restrict her movement as the usual retainer does. She went to the city after Reinhard left the mansion. She brought her sword with her, but she didn't wear her armor because it was too conspicuous. There is also another reason why she went to the city. She was worried about the girl and the big guy named Ram from yesterday. Because she accepted Reinhard's offer to become a king, she wanted to look at the situation of the slum from yesterday. It was something that she cannot accept. A slum in the capital is a sign of poverty, she wanted to erase it. From what she learned from the book with Reinhard, this kingdom is named Lugnica. It was one of the major 4 power in the world. She cannot believe that one of the major powers still has slums in its capital city. In the quiet street of the slum, Arturia walked towards the house that she destroyed yesterday. The 3 gold coins from Reinhard were still in her pocket, she didn't know how much the coin actually is, but she at least wanted to give some of it to the big guy named Ram yesterday as her apology for destroying the house. She arrived at the house from yesterday and saw Ram and the blonde girl from yesterday were fixing the house with woods. The girl was on the roof and fixing it while Ram was lifting a block of wood and blocking the destroyed wall with it. Arturia approached them and greeted them. "Good afternoon." The 2 of them were looking at Arturia when they heard her greeting. Ram was looking at her cautiously when he saw her sword, while the girl on the roof was smiled and jumped down. "Oh. You are from yesterday. Thank you for saving old man Ram." She ran towards Arturia and bowed her head a little. When Ram heard the girl, he lowered his guard and approached Arturia. "So you were the one that felt talked about, thank you for saving me, missy," said Ram as he smiled. Arturia was surprised when she saw Ram up close. He's huge, around 2.5 to 3 meters tall. She needs to look up to see his face. She smiled and looked at Ram straight into his eyes. "It's no problem, just doing my job as a knight. More importantly, I destroyed your house and I am here to apologize for that." Ram and the girl, that he called Felt, blinked their eyes repeatedly and laughed. Arturia didn't understand why they laughed, so she just stood there surprised. "Ha ha ha, missy. You don't need to apologize for that. It's an almost daily occurrence in this part of the city, so we are used to fixing the house periodically," said Ram as he held his stomach to stop his laughter. "That's right, miss. Although I'm a thief, I am someone who knows gratitude. I won't forget that you saved us along with Reinhard and that boy with sharp eyes from before. So you don't need to apologize to us." Arturia smiled at them and said. "Then it's good. By the way, allow me to help you fix the house. I am inexperienced, but I can cut the wood very well." She showed her bicep which of course has no muscle in it because of her tiny body. Her body can't grow anymore as she's now Arturia Lily, the wielder of Caliban. As the wielder of Caliban, she's immortal. Her growth stopped at the time she wielded the Caliban because of its magic. She sometimes wondered if she's turned immortal after gaining Arturia Lily's body, but it turned out she is. In truth, yesterday she was injured a little from her battle against Elsa, but she didn't mind it as it was just a bruise. This morning though, when she woke up from her sleep, the bruise was healed. So she confirmed the regenerative that the wielder of Caliban had, and she became worried for her future. She's just a young girl, not even 20 years old yet. She wanted to experience growth, but now she can't. But, she's glad too. because she could maintain her beauty even after she turned old in the future. She remembered the scene where Arturia in the story pulled Caliban from the stone, and she remembered that Merlin said something to Arturia. But, she forgot that something. She knows the code of chivalry, and she remembered the part about murder. Murder is the same as killing, right? Or am I mistaken about something? I told Reinhard that I can't kill, but I just said it because I am still afraid of taking the lives of others. Thought Arturia. She was thinking a lot of things, but she need to help the two people in front of her right now. Rom laughed once again and said, I know that you can cut well, Missy. But really, you don't need to help us. We are fine with just the two of us. Arturia was glad that the person in front of her is not as scary as he look. He's in fact a kind person in her definition. She smiled at Rom and said, well, if you refuse my help then I can't do anything about it. I will leave for the city then. I am new to this capital city, so I would like someone to be my guide. Coincidentally, I have 3 gold coins in my pocket. I think I will have half of them as a reward for my guide. Said Arturia as she eyed Felt. Are you serious, miss? Shouted Felt as she smiled wide. Rom understand why Arturia did it and just looked at Felt and Arturia with a smile. Unfortunately, Missy. I can't guide you with my look. How about this Felt over here? She knows about the city more than me. What a coincidence, can you guide me, Felt? Asked Arturia. Felt looked at Rom for a second and saw him nodded his head, permitting her to guide Arturia. She then turned to look at Arturia and shouted. Leave it to me. She put her right hand on top of her chest and smiled. Then I am counting on you, Felt. Answered Arturia with a smile. Chapter 11, A Week Time. Arturia was walking around the capital city guided by Felt. They are walking around and stopping in a few stalls to eat a snack on their way. Arturia was able to meet a new person, and she understand a little bit better about the city. There is something that confused her when they were shopping in the stalls. Like the fruit that looked like apple. It was called appa by the stall owner, and she found out that almost all of the fruit was called differently from her homeworld. She also found the value of gold coins after she bought a few fruits for herself and Felt. 2 apples, or appas that she brought cost her 4 copper. She paid with one of her gold coins, but the stall owner was a bit in a bind to give her the exchange, that's why Felt paid for the appas and told Arturia about the values of her coin. They went back to Rom's house after Felt guided Arturia through the entire city. After reaching Rom's house, Arturia gave Felt 2 gold coins as she promised. Felt was happy getting gold coins from Arturia and she said that she will use it to fix old man Rom's house. Arturia smiled while watching her, but because the sun has almost set, she bid the 2 of them farewell and went back to Reinhard's mansion. When she reached the mansion, Reinhard was waiting for her in front of the entrance with a smile. Have you enjoyed your day, milady? Asked Reinhard. Arturia approached Reinhard with a smile and said, Yes, I have fun in the city. How about you, Sir Reinhard? Was the Sage Council give you the insignia? Reinhard just smiled in response and pulled a black insignia, similar to Amelia's, and handed it to Arturia. She took it in her hand and raised it. She looked at the insignia and marveled at the red gem in the middle of it that let out a pale red glow. After being satisfied with looking at the insignia, Arturia put it in her pocket and looked at Reinhard. Can you tell me about your conversation with the Sage Council? Asked Arturia. Of course, milady. Should we head inside to talk about it? Yes, let's do it in the library. Anne. As Arturia said that, her stomach grumbled. She just ate appa for lunch, so she was starved right now. Can you bring me some dinner? Reinhard chuckled a little while covering his mouth with his hand. Yes, I will bring it to the library. Please wait for me there. After finishing the meal that Reinhard brought for her, Arturia sat on the chair in front of Reinhard and waited for his report. Well, milady. Although they acknowledge your participation, there is a catch. Because 5 candidates were found, the Sage Council will gather those candidates in one place in a week. In other words, you must learn about our country in a week, which I think is enough time for you. Said Reinhard as he smiled at Arturia. I see, in 1 week the candidates will be gathered to be introduced to the people of this kingdom? What do you know about the other candidates, Sir Reinhard? Is there any candidate which is not a human? Like blood from different races flows in their body. Asked Arturia. She saw Reinhard's expression change a little, so she quickly added. Ah, It's not like I discriminate them or anything. I just wanted to know about the other candidates. Before I answered your question, milady. Could I ask why you asked that question? Having the blood of another race flow in their body usually made them halfling, which is rare in this world. Asked Reinhard seriously. Arturia made a mistake. Now that Reinhard asked her, should she have answered him honestly? That the blood of dragon flow in her body and she has unawakened dragon heart that acted as her core. After thinking for a while, Arturia decided to tell Reinhard. He's her first knight, and he vowed to her. That's why Arturia trusts Reinhard more than anyone in this world. Hesitating a little, Arturia opened her mouth. Because I have a dragon heart. So, the blood of the dragon flows in my body through my heart. Is that made me a halfling? Because I think not, I am a human. Reinhard was surprised, his eyes were widened and his mouth was opened. He tried to say something to Arturia but ultimately he could only say. I see. Arturia understood his reaction, but she was not done yet. Not only that, because of my sword, Caliban, I am immortal. I can't age, my regeneration would be amplified. Not only that, low to medium ranked magic won't work against me. I have magic resistance because of my dragon heart. So you could call me an immortal monster if you wanted to. Explained Arturia. Arturia tried to look at Reinhard's reaction, but he surprisingly smiled at her. It must be hard. Shouldering the expectation from the other people to become the next king while carrying those burdens inside your mind. I kind of know you're feeling, milady. I'm sorry but, I think I can't tell you about my story yet. But, trust me, milady. If there is anyone in this world who knows about your burden, then that person is me. Sword Saint title is not that glorious as people thought. Said Reinhard with a wry smile. Sir Reinhard. Muttered Arturia. It was at that time, the king candidate and her knight began to open up to each other. There is 1 week time before the gathering, they need to prepare all thing by themselves, as there are no other people in their faction. Even so, Arturia and Reinhard are strong. They are stronger than most people in the world. If Arturia unleashed all of her magic inside her, then no one except for a few could match her. That was the extent of Arturia's full potential. Reinhard, being the Sword Saint itself, is one of the strongest existence in the world. That's why they made a plan. The only possible way to win the election is doing what they are best of. It's monster hunting, right? We also need to get a lot of followers for our camp. One who understood about magic and politics are preferred. Said Arturia to Reinhard. If only I have Merlin by my side, that would be better. Thought Arturia. The other candidates were also amassing their strength slowly. We have no resources like them. If we want the civilians to know the worth of our faction, I think I can make use of my specialty this time. Oh. What a coincidence, I was thinking about something that we could use to gain the citizens' approval. Asked Arturia. Shall we say it together, milady? Asked Reinhard with a smile. I don't mind, Sir Reinhard. Answered Arturia. Both of them were counting down with their hand and said at the same time. Monster hunting. Chapter 12, 5 candidates. Now, Sir Reinhard. I must know about our competitors in this election. Could you tell me more about them? Asked Arturia to Reinhard with a serious face. Alright, milady. There are 4 other candidates excluding you, 3 of them are fully human, while one of them is a half-elf. I believe you met one of them yesterday, her name is Emilia. The lady that we saved from Elsa Granhirt yesterday. Answered Reinhard. Arturia nodded her head because she already know about Emilia. She remembered the girl with platinum silver hair from yesterday. Her white dress screamed out that she was someone from high ranking. But something was more visible than all of that, the kindness that she showed towards the boy, Subaru, was amazing. Even though she only knew about that boy yesterday, she was willing to shelter him in her mansion. Arturia respects that kindness. The half-elf that I talked about earlier is Lady Emilia herself. Added Reinhard. I know, I noticed her pointed ears. Can you tell me her supporter? Asked Arturia. Yes, her supporter is the best magician in this kingdom. His name is Roswell L. Mathers, he's the Margrave of Mathers territory as well as Ludnica's court mage. He's a bit of an eccentric man, but he's the best magician in this kingdom. Explained Reinhard. So he's like Merlin, huh? I kinda want to see him. said Arturia, which managed to gain Reinhard's attention. Merlin? If I remember correctly, he's the great magician that made the prophecy about your sword, milady? Asked Reinhard. Yes, he is. I believe he's the strongest mage that I know, that's why I am curious about this person named Roswell. If he's like Merlin, then we have a troublesome enemy. Added Arturia in her mind. Reinhard nodded his head and said. I believe he will attend the gathering that will be held in a week. All supporters and knights of the candidates will be invited to the gathering. All knights and supporters. All Arturia has is Reinhard, she has no supporter right now. Will she be okay? No, she will. I see, then who is Amelia's knight? Asked Arturia. Reinhard was a bit hesitant to answer her question, but he still answered her. She has no knight for now. Because of her heritage, there was no one willing to become her knight. Arturia narrowed her eyes at Reinhard's answer. Because Amelia is a half-elf, there was no one willing to be her knight. Arturia has a lot of questions, but she just said one word. Why? A lot of people from our kingdom are afraid of her appearance. She has a really similar appearance with the most feared witch in the world, the Witch of Envy. She almost destroyed the whole world 400 years ago, before ultimately being killed by the sage, the dragon Volcanica, and my ancestor, the first sword saint Redistria. Explained Reinhard. A witch, huh? If I remember correctly, Arturia has a sister that turned into a queen witch because of her envy towards Arturia, who was loved by her father. She was also the reason why Arturia lost her scabbard, Avalon. Truly, there is even a witch in this world. That's terrifying. So there is also a witch in this world. Let's talk about that matter in the other days, Sir Reinhard. I would prefer if you continue your explanation about the other candidates. Reinhard smiled at Arturia and said. Very well, milady. The next candidate is Anastasia Hashin. She was a merchant from Kararaji, the owner of Hashin Trading Company. She managed to make her company into one of the biggest ones in Kararaji in such a short amount of time. I believe that she's the richest out of the 5 candidates. Her knight is Julius Juculius, the man who is known as the finest of knights in this kingdom. Oh, that's interesting. I wanted to meet him and have a little bout as a fellow knight then. I believe he will accept your offer, milady. Answered Reinhard with a smile. Arturia was interested in this finest of knight and wanted to have a bout with him. But, right now she must focus on the gathering that will be held in a week. Arturia understood that money will be essential in this election. Her plan with Reinhard to win this election is by monster hunting and some other plan that Arturia had in mind. Such as rebuilding the slum into a better place. Maybe the noble will be offended, no, they will be offended for sure. But, Arturia wanted the citizens to have a better life. They didn't deserve to be thrown even if they are poor. So, Arturia decided on something. She needs to cooperate with the other candidates or some merchant. We can sell the result of your monster hunting to her company. That way both of us will make a profit. That way, we could hire mercenaries and feed the people in the slum. Said Arturia to Reinhard. Reinhard nodded her head and said. That's a good idea, milady. The candidates were indeed enemies to each other, but there is nothing wrong with allying ourselves with the other candidates. That's right, Sir Reinhard. Now, who is the next candidate? That would be Priscilla Bariel, milady. She's known as a haughty individual who has really good luck on her side. Her knight always wears a helmet, but we know him as Owl. Said Reinhard. Arturia put her hand on her chin and muttered. Luck, huh? Yes, she was lucky. Even though she is only 19 years old, Priscilla had 8 husbands who all died due to a mysterious illness. If we are talking about the luckiest individual, she will sit on the number 1 spot. Arturia was suspicious of this Priscilla. She narrowed her eyes and asked Reinhard. Mysterious illness? Are you sure that they are not poisoned? Reinhard shook his head and said. No, milady. They were not. Fine, the last candidate. The next one is Crush Karsten. She's the matriarch of House Karsten and she's the favorite candidate to win in this royal selection. She has a knight by her side by the name Felix Argyle, who is also a good knight. Reinhard looked a bit hesitant to continue his explanation, so Arturia asked. What's wrong? Arturia was a bit worried about Reinhard. He suddenly stopped in the middle of his explanation, there must be something wrong or something that made him hesitate to tell her. Reinhard shook his head and replied with a smile. No, there is nothing wrong. I will continue the explanation, milady. Arturia nodded her head a little, gesturing Reinhard to continue. There is also a skilled swordman that worked as Karsten's instructor. His name is Wilhelm van Astria, my grandfather. Said Reinhard with a bitter smile on his face. Arturia understood, there must be some family problem that made the relationship between Reinhard and his grandfather to be strangled. She didn't want to bring it up if Reinhard didn't want to tell him either, that's why she just said. Alright, now we just need to prepare for my speech, right? Can you accompany me, Sir Reinhard? I need your opinion. Reinhard was smiling at Arturia, he somehow understood that Arturia wanted to change the subject for him, and he was grateful that she didn't ask him any further. With pleasure, milady. Answered Reinhard as he bowed his head politely. Chapter 13, to the conference. It has been a week since Arturia talked with Reinhard. Today was the day of the conference. They had made a plan for this occasion. In this week, Arturia found out about something. She could make her armor appear with just a thought, like the saber in the Holy Grail Wars. She has no real information about the other candidates other than Reinhard's information, that's why she will act as a knight and join the row of the knights for a formality. That way she could also brought her sword with her. Arturia was a bit scared leaving her sword in someone else's care, so she asked Reinhard's cooperation for this. Reinhard agreed with her idea and once again he went to the castle to ask for permission from the Sage Council. He said that Arturia wanted to look like a knight like she has always been, that's why she wanted to go inside the party in Lugnika's knight costume. The Sage Council approved Reinhard's request with no question asked. They knew about Arturia's identity as a knight and as a rightful heir to Britain's throne. Reinhard had told them with Arturia's permission, that's why they wanted to at least honor Arturia's wishes. The conference was located in the castle, and it will be held in the afternoon. Arturia had prepared herself, she was donned in a white shirt with a black stripe on the front side of the shirt and white pants. She also wore a white robe of Lusigna's knight with a red accent on the shoulder area on top of her shirt. She tied her hair the same way Saber does, making her look like an androgynous man. Reinhard was also donned in a similar outfit, and they were sitting inside a dragon carriage. This carriage is the same as the usual carriage, but instead of a horse, the carriage was pulled by a ground dragon. The conference won't be started until every candidate arrived, milady. So, we will have time to see what the other candidates doing inside the hall before the conference officially started. Said Reinhard. That's a good idea, Sir Reinhard. As Arturia said that, a big dragon carriage passed theirs. The carriage that passed their carriage was extravagant. It has red color as a base with gold accessories. On top of the black roof sat a blue gem that was surrounded by gold rail. The dragon that pulled the carriage was also red. Reinhard's gaze followed the carriage before turning back to Arturia. It seems one of the candidates had passed us. In that carriage, Sir Reinhard? Asked Arturia. Indeed, that was Lady Priscilla's carriage. It seems we must abandon our previous plan. If that lady had arrived, then the conference would certainly have been started. Arturia was silent for a second before she remembered what Reinhard told about Priscilla. I see, then should I change my clothes right now? I can do it instantly. That would be better, milady. I'm sorry that I must inconvenience you. Said Reinhard. No problem, Sir Reinhard. It was my suggestion that made me wear this night attire after all. So I don't mind it. Said Arturia to Reinhard. She looked at Reinhard while gesturing with her eyes to look away, but Reinhard didn't catch her signal. He only tilted his head a little, so Arturia said. Could you look away for a second? Even though I could change in less than a second, it is still embarrassing if you looked at me. Ah, please forgive me. Said Reinhard as he looked away from Arturia. Arturia's body glowed a second and then her clothes have changed into the usual white dress, complete with the armor and gauntlet. I am ready, Sir Reinhard. Said Arturia. Reinhard turned to Arturia for a second before turning to look at the carriage's door. It seems that we have arrived too. He stood up and opened the door. Arturia also followed him exiting the carriage. Reinhard, who had exited the carriage first, helped Arturia to come down from it. Shall we go, milady? Asked Reinhard as he bowed his head and spread his right arm in the direction of the castle. Take care of me, my knight. Answered Arturia. She has changed her way to speak to fit those of a ruler. She imitated Saber from Fate, as she knew that Saber was the closest one that she could imitate right now. Although she has Arturia's body and skill, she is still a bit lacking in charisma. That's why she has learned how to talk like a ruler in the past week. Certainly, milady, answered Reinhard as he walked behind Arturia. Inside the hall was filled with a lot of knights and the Sage Council has taken their seat. 4 candidates were lined up in front of the Sage Council, only left Arturia who hasn't arrived yet. For some reason, Reinhard has joined the row of the knights while Arturia was still nowhere to be seen. No, Arturia was standing right beside Reinhard silently. As they entered the hall a few minutes before the Sage Council, they saw an opportunity for Arturia to sneak in the row of the knights. Although she didn't wear Lusigna's knight attire right now, no one questioned her standing because she entered the hall with Reinhard. The Sage Council was looking at Arturia's direction, but they have been informed by Reinhard a few days ago. The last to arrive was not Arturia and Reinhard as they guessed, instead it's a young man named Subaru that Arturia met a week ago and a strange one-handed man wearing a steel helmet. When Subaru lined up in the line of the knights, Reinhard turned his head and said, "As expected you are here too, Subaru." "Oh, Reinhard. I've been looking for you everywhere," said Subaru. Arturia heard what Reinhard said and the new voice turned towards them. "Oh, the young man from a week ago. Oh, the girl from before. Thank you for saving me at that time." "No problem, it was my duty. Now, it seems that the main event is about to start," said Arturia as she turned to a guy wearing steel armor beside the candidates. Subaru also shut his mouth and looked at the man who wore steel armor beside the candidates. "Now, if I may be so forward. I, Marcos the leader of Imperial Knights will direct today's conference." Chapter 14, Conference. It all happened about half a year ago when Marcos began explaining about the history of the royal selection, one of the candidates with purple hair interrupted him. "I get that you want to talk up a good show here, but I'm busy, you know. As we say in Kararaji, time is money." Arturia narrowed her eyes at the purple-haired girl. It was not polite to interrupt a knight that announced something. She then branded the purple-haired girl as a greedy one. From her appearance, the one that matched Reinhard's description was the merchant, Anastasia Hashin. After Anastasia ended her talk, the girl with green hair wearing a military outfit beside her added, "I agree. Crush-sama, should the head of Karsten's family say such a thing? Formality is important, but our time is limited. It would be wise to immediately inform us why we are here." "Naturally, I do have a general idea as to why we are gathered here," said Crush. Arturia was a bit impressed by the military girl. If she knew about the reason why they are here, then it was best if Arturia stepped out right now. She looked at Reinhard and saw him gesturing her to stay in the line for now. Arturia nodded her head a little and decided to remain on the line for now. If Reinhard gestured her to stay, then he must have his reason. "You already know the purpose of this meeting?" asked the oldest man in Sage Council. Crush crossed her arms and said with closed eyes, "Yes, Lord Miklatov. For a drinking party, correct?" "No, that is not correct," answered the oldest man, Miklatov. Arturia has almost let out a chuckle when Miklatov said that. Crush had said all of that with a tone full of confidence, but she had guessed it wrong. Crush was surprised that Miklatov denied her claim, but she quickly turned to look at the row of the knights and asked, "Ferris, this isn't what you told me." The knight behind the helmet guy responded to Crush's call. "Oh, come on. I just said that it may be a drinking party." "Is that so?" said Crush. She turned back to look at Miklatov and added, "Forgive me. Allow me to retract everything I said earlier. Hey now. Even if she backed away, my opinion ain't gonna change. We already know about the royal selection. Right?" said Anastasia as she looked at her left. The platinum silver-haired girl, that Arturia knew as Amelia, answered with a stutter. "I think we should he dash." But, before she was done with her sentence, Anastasia cut her off. "Sorry, but I wasn't asking for your opinion." "Why, yo dash," Arturia could hear Subaru's voice from behind. But, as she was concentrated on the candidates, she didn't do anything to her. Reinhard also just looked at the situation, so she knew that it will be okay. Fortunately, the helmet man immediately shut Subaru off and calmed him down with a loud voice. "Hey! I don't know about the selection, could you explain it to me?" The helmet man shouted as he raised his right hand. Miklatov turned to the blonde-haired girl and asked. Priscilla Sama. I was told that man is your knight. Have you not explained it to him? Even if I explained it, you guys will still rumbling about it, right? Marcos, continue your speech. Said the blonde-haired girl, Priscilla to Marcos with a commanding tone. Marcos continued his explanation until finally, he called a name. Knight Reinhard van Astria, come forward. Yes, sir. Answered Reinhard. He looked at Arturia for a second before walking towards Marcos. He stopped behind the candidates and bowed his head. Honored members of the Sage Council. I, Reinhard van Astria of the Imperial Knights, would like to announce the completion of my mission. Reinhard raised his head as he said that. The Dragon Maiden, the fifth and the final candidate for the throne has been located. Everyone gasped when they heard Reinhard's word. They began to look around the room, but they were silenced by a voice. I see now. It is disappointing. Arturia said with a voice that could be heard by everyone in the room. Subaru and the helmet man were surprised and they looked at Arturia who walked towards the other candidates. Miss? Asked Subaru as his gaze followed Arturia's back. The one, I, Reinhard van Astria gave my life for. The one I promised to make her a king, I present you, Arturia Pendragon. Reinhard stepped sideways and bowed his head. Arturia keep walking and as he passed Reinhard, he said. Please take your place, milady. I must say, Sir Reinhard. The other candidates were not as impressive as you said. No, some of them didn't fit to be a king. Said Arturia as she eyed the other candidates. A greedy one. She said as her gaze stopped at Anastasia. Anastasia didn't show any reaction when Arturia called her greedy, as such was her nature. The proud one, this one is a good candidate to be a king. But, she must have not let her confidence lead her astray like earlier. Said Arturia as she looked at Crush. Crush looked back at Arturia with the same confidence that she had earlier. She just nodded her head a little as if she noted Arturia's word. The haughty one. She reminded me of someone. But, that someone is a great king, his haughtiness has a base, and that is his ability. Said Arturia as she looked at Priscilla. She remembered a certain king with the same hair color from the same series as Arturia, but that king is a man, and he has the right to flaunt his position. Priscilla opened her fan to cover her face, but she was looking at Arturia with displeasure. A kind one. But she's too kind and too forgiving. She will be a kind king, but not a good one. Said Arturia as she looked at the surprised Amelia. She must have never expected that Arturia was the fifth candidate for the throne. Milady, they are a great people. Please don't judge them too early. Said Reinhard as he raised his body. Indeed, haughtiness brought us doom. Answered Arturia. Arturia-sama, if you are finished with your evaluation, please come here. Said Marcos as he pointed at the candidate's line politely. I will go back to my line, milady. Good luck. Said Reinhard as he walked back to his line. Arturia walked towards Marcus and stopped beside Amelia. She already knew what to do because Reinhard told her, so she pulled the dragon insignia from her pocket and held it high with her left hand. The gem in the middle of the insignia began to let out a red glow and it surprised everyone in the room. As the gem glowed, Reinhard began to shout. As you can see, the dragon gem has recognized Arturia-sama as a priestess. Now that her participation has been approved, I believe it is time to begin the royal selection in earnest. Right after Reinhard said that the knights in the room put their right palm on their chest and bowed their heads. Chapter 15, Conference 2. Even if the dragon stone recognized her, do you not think that her participation is a bit problematic? Asked one of the noble that stood in the right row. Marcos narrowed her eyes at him. Do you believe that we, the Imperial Knights, have made an error? With Marcos's word, every knight in the room turned to look at the noble with a narrowed gaze. The noble looked back at them with the same gaze, both parties didn't want to back down and admit that they were wrong. Arturia and the other candidates just looked forward without minding any of them. They were chosen already, so they didn't bother listening to the rant of the nobles. She doesn't have the self-awareness of a ruler. Said one of the nobles. She's uneducated as well. Said another noble. At that word, Arturia could see Amelia's body flinched a little. So she knew that Amelia was targeted by the other nobles. Miklatov can't handle the nobles' rant and silence them with one word. Silence. He looked at Reinhard and asked. Knight Reinhard. Would you begin by explaining to us what led you to her discovery? Reinhard took a half kneel and put his sword down. He didn't kneel fully towards Miklatov, because he already swore to Arturia, and he's Arturia's knight. Miklatov didn't seem to mind that, so Reinhard began to speak. I've met with Arturia-sama about 1 month ago in the alleyway of the city. After I met her, I asked her a question because I've never met a knight with her name. So that incident led me with discovery about her being the last candidate for the royal selection. Said Reinhard. It was planned to make it like Arturia was found a month ago, not a week ago, to fool the noble. Reinhard had told Sage Council about the true story, so his story right now was nothing but a formality. But, there is a noble that did not accept Reinhard's story. Ha! So she's just a pretend knight from an alleyway? The first noble that disagreed with Arturia's participation shouted. Hearing that word, Arturia snapped. How dare he call her a pretend knight? Mana began to form a golden glow around her and almost all the nobles stepped back. Arturia turned towards the noble that called her a pretend knight and asked. How dare to call me a pretend knight? I won't allow anyone to trample my pride as a knight. The noble was beyond terrified. They never thought that Arturia would be pissed off by his word and gathered a lot of mana like that. Reinhard stepped in front of Arturia with a serious face and said. Milady, please hold yourself back. The nobles always look down on a knight, so I know you're feeling right now. Arturia calmed down immediately after she heard Reinhard's word and took a deep breath. The golden aura around her disappeared and her serious face was replaced with a kind smile. I took it too far. I apologize. Said Arturia before she turned back to look at the Sage Council. I apologize for my actions earlier, it spites me to be called a pretend knight, I hope you understand. Miklatov nodded his head and said. Don't worry, Arturia-sama. We understand that. I must apologize for him too, for calling you a pretend knight. Well, all of this long-winded blather could not be more tedious. How about we start now? Priscilla cut off the conversation and said with a haughty voice. Certainly, that is the case. Said Miklatov. As if that word became a sign, Marcos put his hand behind his back and said. Then, royal selection candidates, please come forth. The candidates, together with their knight, approached Marcos and turned towards the crowd. Then Marcos began to introduce them one by one. Each candidate that was called have to step forward with their attendant and give a short speech to the crowd to appeal as to why they must be chosen as the king of this kingdom. Priscilla Bariel-sama and her attendant, Al. The selection is pointless. I am the one suited to rule this nation. All you people need to do is grovel at my feet and serve me. Shouted Priscilla as she raised her fan towards the crowd. Arturia didn't like her already. In her homeworld, she thought that Gilgamesh was cool. But, seeing a real haughty person in front of her made her think about it twice. Marcos continued the introduction to the second candidate. Head of the Karsten family, Crush Karsten-sama. Her attendant, the knight Felix Argyle. Should I become the new ruler, I will make the dragon forget the covenant it demanded. Said Crush as she spread her arm. The dragon's empire of Lugnica belongs not to the dragon, but us. Artura looked at Crush and thought. Even after I said that her confidence could ruin her. As that is the end of Crush's speech, Marcos continued. Anastasia Hashin-sama of the Hashin Company, and her attendant, the knight Julius Eucleus. Arturia looked at Anastasia's knight, Julius. So that's the finest knight that Reinhard talked about. He certainly looked like that. I'm a greedy gal, so I want everything. No amount of commercial success can satisfy me. I want my own nation. With a short speech, Anastasia walked back to the line and smiled. Amelia-sama and the man endorsing her, Margrave Roswell L. Mathers. Arturia looked at the man that was called the best magician in this country. And, sure. Reinhard didn't lie to her. He was certainly an eccentric man. Amelia stepped forward and put her right hand on her chest. I have only one wish. For all to be equals. I desire to create a nation where all citizens are equal. Still, after the introduction of those knights, I feel terribly out of place. Said Ruswell with a unique way of speaking. The other attendant didn't say anything, but Amelia's attendant somehow did. Maybe because of his position as a noble, no one said anything to him. They walked back into the line and it was Arturia's turn. Finally, the last candidate. Because of her unique identity, her knight wanted her to do the introduction herself. Please step forth, Arturia Pendragon Sama, and her attendant, Knight Reinhard van Astria. Arturia stepped forward to give a speech. She unsheathed her sword and slammed its tip to the ground. She put her hands on the handle and looked at the crowd in front of her. First, I will introduce myself so no one will call me a pretend knight again. I heard that Crush Sama can tell a lie, is that true? Asked Arturia as she looked at Crush. That's correct. Answered Crush. Arturia nodded her head satisfied and shouted. My name is Arturia Pendragon. The wielder of Caliban, the golden sword of assured victory. I'm the one called Princess Knight of Britain, also the next king of all England. For those in this country, I promise you that I will bring you to victory. Chapter 16, A Start of Conflict. Her declaration surprised the crowd. No matter the knights and the nobles, they were surprised by her statement. But, one voice silenced them. I see now, that was why you were confident. Crush crossed her arms and nodded her head. She was saying the truth. Reinhard also added. And I can attest to that too. With her permission, I will also add. If I fight against Arturia Sama, then I believe it will be a long fight without any winner. The crowd began to burst into commotion when they heard Reinhard's word. Why? Why were they surprised when they heard that Reinhard couldn't win against her? Arturia was confused. But then she remembered that Reinhard was a sword saint. Maybe he said that he couldn't beat her because he misunderstood her immortality. Her regeneration was indeed enhanced, but she could still die if she was killed. She would also lose her immortality if her Caliban was destroyed. But, the nobles and the knights' reactions were good for now. Arturia was satisfied if they thought she was strong. But, she still didn't know much about her knight's strength. It seems she still needs some information gathering about her knight. Silence! Shouted Miklatov. The crowd was instantly silenced with Miklatov's word. But, that didn't stop one candidate to spoke her thoughts. So what? I will be the winner of this selection. Strong knight meant nothing in front of me, said Priscilla as she glared at Arturia. Arturia went back to the line and glared back at Priscilla. What do you mean? Priscilla stepped forward and turned towards Arturia. She closed her fan and pointed it right at Arturia's face. A knight, but without a clear background. Did you perhaps didn't notice it? Knight was supposed to follow the king, not become one. Or what, you wanted to be a king, that was why you pretended as a knight. She opened her fan again and covered her lower face with it. Arturia glared at Priscilla more intensely. Her pride was just trampled down by a haughty girl, she can't accept that. Take back your word. I won't forgive anyone who insulted my pride as a knight. I demand you to apologize for your words. She sheathed Caliban back to its sheath and turned towards Priscilla. The other candidates were just looked at them with an amused gaze, but Emilia was confused by the sudden development and looked at Arturia and Priscilla back and forth. Insolence, who do you think I am? Said Priscilla as Mana gathered around her, levitating her skirt slightly. The helmet man in the night line stepped forward a little and said. Princess, that's... But, before he was done with his sentence, Priscilla raised her fan and swung it towards Arturia, creating a gust of hot wind. Arturia could feel Reinhard move, but she stopped him and said. Magic at that degree meant nothing to me. True with her words, when a gust of wind that was created by Priscilla almost hit Arturia's body, an invisible shield appeared in front of her and negated the magic. The other people were surprised by that, and Emilia used this chance to step in front of Arturia and shouted. What are you thinking in a place like this? Emilia appeared to protect Arturia from Priscilla, although that was unnecessary. But, Arturia was a bit grateful for her kindness. As Arturia was about to say something to Emilia, Priscilla cut her off. I was only trying to make her learn herself. Said Priscilla as she pulled her fan back and covered her lower face again, her left hand was on her hip, and she closed her eyes as looked down on Emilia. You won't even apologize? Shouted Emilia at Priscilla as she swung her right hand to further enhance her shout. Then, will you also apologize for being born? Said Priscilla to Emilia. Emilia was shaken by her words and took a step back. You silver-haired half-elf. Arturia, who heard that, was confused. Why? Why did Priscilla say that to Emilia? Was Priscilla discriminating a halfling? If that's so, then Arturia would be offended too. But, Emilia's next words made it clear for Arturia. I am not connected to witch at all, said Emilia with a scared tone. Now everything was clear. Arturia also understood the situation. Silver-haired half-elf, that was the characteristic of the Witch of Envy that Arturia read from the book in Reinhard's library. She understood that witch was a vile creature, but the girl in front of her was a kind person. She even defended her from being attacked by Priscilla. Priscilla's knight that stood behind Subaru scratched his helmet and said, "Princess, could you stop now? I'll be the one who suffers if you make too many enemies, seriously." Arturia looked at the man with a helmet and commended his bravery. He was brave enough to tell his king about what was wrong, and he was ready to take his king's enemies if the need arise. Unfortunately, his king was not that kind of person. Arturia's dislike for Priscilla grew, but she decided to bury it inside her. She must be just, she will not discriminate person. But, Arturia was also human, that was why she stepped forward in front of Emilia and asked the sage council. "So, we have made our speech. What's next? If the nobles were dissatisfied with my participation, then I will allow them to talk to me directly. If the knights weren't acknowledged me as a proper knight, then I will accept a duel from them. If this country discriminates against a halfling, then I will stop that with my own way. This is a joke. I've overlooked it because it was urgent, but to drag it this long is unbelievable. I bet that pretend knight asked Astrea to make her look like a knight. Even her magic is fake," shouted the first noble that raised his voice earlier. The sage council that sat beside Miklatov also said, "He's right. I didn't believe Astrea's report since the start. What kind of princess would be stranded in Lugnica right in the middle of royal selection? Not only that, Margrave Mathers endorses a half-devil." Roswell looked at the member of the sage council with a smile and said, "Calling a half-elf a half-devil isn't nice, you know. Look, there is someone who was offended by your word over there." However, the member of the sage council ignored Roswell's word and continued. "That silver-haired half-devil matches the appearance of the Witch of Envy as it has been described for generations. Why do you not realize that allowing her presence in the throne room is dreadful?" The member of the sage council who said that closed his eyes and looked down. "Filthy woman." As he said that, Subaru shouted from the crowd, "Enough of you dash," but, his shout was silenced by Reinhard that suddenly appeared behind him on Arturia's order. She had expected Subaru to shout because she looked at him since the sage council talked about a bad thing towards Emilia. Arturia walked towards the sage council who said all of that and slammed her hand on the table in front of him. "Witch of Envy, are you really that scared with her?" Chapter 17, Duel. The man looked at Arturia and answered her. "What? Are you saying that you can defeat the Witch of Envy if she reappeared?" "I don't know. I have yet to meet her, so I don't know. But I'm confident that I could hold my ground if I fight her," said Arturia. Arturia turned around and was about to leave with Reinhard. But, a purple-haired man with knight attire stepped forward from the knight line and said, "Then, are you confident to fight the knight of this kingdom?" Arturia looked at him and recognized him. "The finest knight of Lugnica, Julius Jaculius. You were saying that you were a knight all this time, but only Reinhard believed you. You also said that you will prove yourself as a knight with a duel. Did you not?" asked Julius to Arturia with a serious expression. Arturia looked at him and nodded her head. "That was what I said. Because you are one of the candidates to rule Lugnica, then please allow my rude behavior. I admit that you are skilled, but I had not recognized you as a knight yet. I, Julius Juclius, ask you for a duel." Julius unsheathed his sword and raised it in front of his face. However, Arturia didn't unsheath her sword. She nodded her head with a serious expression and answered him, "I accept. Tell me about the place and time after this conference is over." Julius sheathed back his sword and answered with a smile. "Certainly, I will inform you about the location of the duel later." Miklatov that was watching all of that suddenly stood up from his seat and shouted. In any case, although there were some debates amongst the candidates, all candidates are here at last. The royal selection will now begin. Arturia stood in the middle of an arena with Reinhard on her side. Julius, who issued the duel to Arturia, stood in front of her while loosening his arms and legs. The duel that they agreed to have was held right after Miklatov announced the beginning of the royal selection because of the knight's request. Right now the knights of Lugnica were watching the duel from the spectator's seat. Not only that, but the other candidates were also watching the duel between Arturia and Julius. Reinhard was chosen to be the referee because everyone trusts him, and even Reinhard himself proposed that he will act as a referee. His reason for being the referee was that only he could stop Arturia or Julius if they went too far. Nobody refused his proposal, and now they were getting ready for their duel. Julius was wearing the Lugnika's night attire while Arturia was wearing her dress without her armor. She didn't wear her armor mainly to make it fair for both sides. Julius was also not wearing armor, that was why Arturia took her armor off. Not only that, Arturia held a normal standard sword for Lugnika's knight instead of her caliban because of Reinhard's suggestion. Julius looked at her with a narrowed gaze and asked, "Why don't you use your sword? Are you belittling me?" Arturia's caliban was still strapped on her left waist, she was afraid to lose it. She looked at the iron sword in her hand, and after looking for a while she threw it away. "You're correct, I must not underestimate my opponent," Arturia said to Julius. She looked at Reinhard as she unsheathed her caliban. "Reinhard, my sword is not like yours. I won't hold back in the duel. That was not like me at all." "I see, forgive me for misunderstanding the situation, milady. I thought that you can only draw your sword when fighting against injustice," said Reinhard as he bowed his head. When Arturia's caliban was fully drawn, Julius narrowed her gaze even further. He could feel that the spirits around him became restless as soon as they saw that sword. He had a bad feeling about the sword. But, as a knight that was called a finest knight, Julius will not be afraid against his opponent. He looked at Arturia and asked, "Shall we begin?" Julius unsheathed his sword and went into a stance. He held his sword with his right hand and pointed it at Arturia while his left hand was placed behind his back. "Let's begin," answered Arturia as she held caliban with both of her hands and pointed it at Julius. As soon as Arturia said that, Reinhard raised his hand and shouted, "Begin." Arturia gathered mana around her body and released it all at once. She used the technique that was often used in the Fate series by Saber, Mana Burst. But, because Arturia just used it for the first time, she still couldn't control the flow of mana as well as Saber. As the result, she used too much mana and her movement was too fast for even her to control. But, she managed to stop herself right in front of Julius and swung her sword upward. Julius was surprised by Arturia's speed, and it could be seen from his expression. But, as a knight that goes through hard training every day, his muscle memory managed to save him from the brink of death. He used his sword to deflect Arturia's slash and stepped back immediately. Arturia, who saw the chance, attacked Julius relentlessly with caliban. Slashes were sent towards Julius's body, torso, arm, and legs. She purposely didn't target her opponent's vital, but Julius was still overwhelmed by Arturia's attack. As Julius kept stepping back to block Arturia's attack, his back touched the wall and he knew that he can't run anymore. With last resort, he called a lesser fire spirit and fed it his mana. The lesser fire spirit sent a fireball towards Arturia, but she ignored it. But, as the fireball was about to hit Arturia, a seemingly invincible barrier extinguished the fireball. The spectators were surprised by what happened in the arena. Julius was also surprised too. Arturia used this chance and swung her caliban horizontally, targeting Julius's neck. She stopped when the sword almost beheaded Julius and said, "Surrender." Julius threw away his sword and raised his hands. "I admit defeat. You are truly strong, but you were holding back, right?" Satisfied with his surrender, Arturia stepped back and sheathed her caliban back, and said, "This is a duel, I didn't hold anything back. If I held back in a duel, then that will hurt my pride and my opponent's." Julius was surprised by her answer. He smiled at Arturia and said, "It is my utter defeat then. You are truly an amazing knight." As Julius said that, a shout filled the arena and Reinhard announced the end of the duel with Arturia as the winner. Chapter 18, Aftermath and Future Action. Arturia and Reinhard were in the lobby of the arena. Arturia sat on the seat while Reinhard stood in front of her while holding a cup of water. He gave Arturia the cup of water and Arturia took it in her hand. "Good job on the duel, milady." "Thank you, Sir Reinhard." Arturia drank the water inside the cup before she put the empty cup on the seat beside her. She looked up at Reinhard and asked, "What will we do after this?" "I believe that we need to make our move now, Sir Reinhard. Can you tell me about the monster that you talked about a week ago?" "Sure, milady. How about we talked about it while walking around the city?" Or should we go back to the mansion? Asked Reinhard as he made a gesture with his right hand. Let's walk around the city, Sir Reinhard. I wanted to look around a little bit more. Arturia said as she stood up from her seat. Arturia and Reinhard were walking on the street of Lugnica. Unlike the conference earlier, right now Reinhard was just walking one step behind Arturia on her right. Arturia asked him to walk by her side, but Reinhard refused her, saying that he better walk behind her to protect her back. As they walked, Arturia asked Reinhard. That Julius, he asked a duel to me because he wanted to be the bad guy, right? Her question surprised Reinhard. He knew about Julius and he also knew why he asked Arturia for a duel. He smiled and answered. So you realized it, milady. Most of the nobles accused you to be a pretend knight, but the knights had realized that you are indeed a fine knight from your behavior in that conference. Julius understood that, and he was not called the finest knight for nothing. Arturia had realized it because of her instinct and the behavior of Julius. If Julius truly doubted Arturia's ability as a knight, he would ask the duel to be conducted using a wooden sword. In another word, their bout earlier would just end as a spar, not as a formal duel. Not only that, Arturia felt Julius surrendered easily. In that position, if Julius just raised his sword slightly, it will end with her jumped back to made some distance. It was because Julius's sword was positioned near her torso, so Arturia was a bit surprised he didn't raise his sword. I had realized it since the beginning. The nobles, they are the same even if they are from different places. I knew from the beginning that the nobles would doubt me and my origins, that was why I made that speech and my dragon blood and the fact that I will not grow any older. I also believed that was enough for your speech, milady. The next thing we need to do is to prove your strength, which was already achieved by defeating Julius in a duel. So we just need to gain the recognition from the citizens. Said Reinhard. Arturia also agreed with Reinhard's reasoning, that was why she asked about the monster that Reinhard talked about. Was there any strong monster still roaming in this world? She would certainly gain recognition by slaying the dangerous beast or monster that endanger humans. But, Arturia still didn't know about the power of those monsters. If the monsters that Reinhard talked about were just like the strange dogs that she met when she just arrived in this world, then it will be easy. Truthfully, she had nothing to do except for testing her ability now. How much strength can she exert in this world? What happened if she put a lot of mana into her Caliban? More importantly, could she use the magic system of this world? Arturia stopped in her track when she realized it. How could she forget about it? She turned to Reinhard and smiled. Sir Reinhard, could I bother you with something? Reinhard, who stopped in his track, looked at Arturia with a curious expression. He was wondering what his lady wanted this time. But, he eventually bowed his head as he put his hand on his chest and said. Please ask anything, milady. Satisfied with Reinhard's answer, Arturia nodded her head and said. Could you teach me magic, I wonder? I am interested in magic and wanted to know if I can use the magic in this place. Reinhard raised his head with a surprised expression. He never expected that Arturia would ask to be taught magic. He thought that Arturia wanted to eat something because she was starved after the duel. He knew that his lady had a big appetite. But, Reinhard quickly composed himself and answered her. For using magic, we must know about your affinity with one first. Although I knew how to find about your affinity, I am afraid that I am not the person for the job, milady. Arturia was a bit disappointed when she heard that. Reinhard noticed the change in Arturia's expression and he continued. But, if you are patient with it, maybe I could ask Julius to help you find your affinity. Julius is a spirit knight, he knew magic more than me. Arturia's expression instantly brightened at Reinhard's word. She would certainly like to meet with Julius and have a talk with him. Their first encounter was a bit awkward, but a knight like Julius must have understood her situation. But Arturia decided to postpone that matter though. Because right now she had something more important than knowing her affinity with magic. That would be great, but right now I wanted to know about the monster that had a big potential to endanger this country, Sir Reinhard. I almost forgot about our original goal as we were walking, so I need to focus on one thing right now. Reinhard was also agreed with her and he nodded his head. He looked at Arturia with a serious face and said. Let's talk about the monster in my mansion, milady. Some people here had lost their loved one because of that monster, so I would like to refrain from talking about such monster in public. Arturia nodded her head in understanding and said, let's go then. Chapter 19, Three Great Beasts 1. Reinhard and Arturia were now in Astria's mansion library. They were here because Arturia wanted to hear about the monster that endangered the civilians. So milady, first those monsters were called Ma Beast. They were created by the Witch of Envy to destroy humans a long time ago. Amongst them, there exist three great beasts are often symbolized as the impossible to slay because of their unique strength. Explained Reinhard. Arturia listened to Reinhard's explanation silently. She nodded her head occasionally, but she was surprised when she heard Reinhard said the Witch of Envy. She noted in her mind that Witch of Envy, or rather which in particular was important existence in this world. The first one is Hakugiai, white whale. It has the appearance of a white whale according to the report from the survivor. It is a big whale that could fly in the sky. It was said that the beast itself was around 50 meters in size. The expedition against this beast had ended up with failure a few times, and until now there was no other expedition again. I see, that beast seems to be dangerous. What else did we know about this Hakugiai, Sir Reinhard? Unfortunately, we have no other information about Hakugiai at the moment. But, there is a rumor that I heard from the other nights. It seems that Karsten's house had gathered a lot of mercenaries to take down Hakugiai. Said Reinhard as he touched the tip of her sword with his left hand. Arturia didn't miss that movement and realized that something happened. She then remembered what Reinhard told her a few days ago about his grandfather. That was why she kept quiet and tried to change the subject of their conversation. Then Sir Reinhard, please tell me about the next beast. Reinhard looked at Arturia with a smile on his face. Alright, then the next beast is called Isagi, Great Rabbit. It has the appearance of a little white rabbit with a little horn on its forehead. Even though this beast is a rabbit, but this beast had destroyed a lot of cities and villages. This beast eats everything in its way, without leaving anything behind. Arturia nodded her head again, but she was confused. Why is this rabbit included as three great beasts? That was right, she didn't understand why a rabbit was dubbed as one of the three great beasts. If it was just a rabbit, then someone with enough strength will be able to kill it. She could understand about the big whale with 50 meters in size which roamed on the sky. But, what was so special about this rabbit? I knew that you would ask that, milady. This rabbit has a special ability. 1. This rabbit was always hungry. 2nd, this rabbit could multiply instantly and infinitely. This ability was discovered a long time ago, but it was confirmed when this beast attacked Karsten's territory. Karsten's house had managed to drive this beast away, but they suffered an immense loss. So this rabbit is really dangerous. Is there any way to kill an enemy that could multiply instantly, Sir Reinhard? When she asked that question, Arturia felt dumb. She knew and she had the meant to kill that beast. But she was not confident to be able to pull it off. She glanced at her sword in her waist before she turned to look at the smiling Reinhard. I could, but I was not allowed to without any permission from the country. There is a law that restricts me, so I couldn't move freely. Arturia looked at Reinhard seriously. Why did the country make a law to restrict Reinhard? Why did they even bother to restrict the knight of their own country? There was only one answer for that. It was because Reinhard was too powerful. Arturia remembered a story. In the story, there was once a king that had a weapon to destroy the world. The king was too powerful for one country to stop. He stood on the top of his throne, ordering his people to take over the surrounding country. But, at the end of the story, that king died. The king who had the weapon to destroy the world died because he can't use the weapon. He was restricted to use it. That was why right now Arturia looked in the direction of the castle with a frown on her face. Who made that law? Asked Arturia as she turned to look at Reinhard. The last royalty, also the other countries in this world, milady. I guess that was what I got for being too strong. Reinhard said with a wry smile on his face. It was as if he blamed himself for the strength that he had. That somehow made Arturia remember Saber. The king regretted being a king because she had lost a lot of things and gained nothing. Arturia won't become a king like that, that was her goal. She looked at Reinhard with a serious face and said, there is nothing wrong with being strong. If you are terrified with your strength, then just believe in mine. Reinhard gave Arturia a sincere smile as he closed his eyes. Thank you, milady. Arturia smiled back at him while nodding her head repeatedly. It was nothing. They paused talking to each other and looking at each other silently before Arturia put on a serious face and asked, the third beast is? Kurahibi, Black Serpent. I don't know much about this beast, but it has poison that was known as black water. This beast is the most dangerous one in my opinion because we have little information about this beast. This beast was last sighted in a certain forest, that is the extent of my knowledge about this beast. In your opinion, which one should we take first? The information about the 5 candidates must have been spread by the council towards the citizens. Reinhard touched his chin with his right hand and looked down on the floor. He was thinking about which one was the best choice and ultimately he looked at Arturia and said. We must collect information first, milady. Those 3 beasts are moving around all the time, we must know about their location first before deciding our target. Because of the law, I was not allowed to leave Lugnica without any permission too, so the beast that was located in Lugnica is our best choice. Arturia agreed with him, and not only that, she had one more thing to add to Reinhard's answer. We need funds and people too. It seems we have a lot of things needed to be done in a short amount of time, Sir Reinhard. Let's do our best. Indeed, let's do our best, milady. Chapter 20, Broken Young Man. After Reinhard explained everything to Arturia, he left because he had a patrol. Arturia allowed him to leave and she herself wanted to visit the girl Felt and the old man Ram too. Ram looked like a veteran in a fight, and he lived in a slum. If Arturia wanted to get herself an ally, a mercenary to hire, then Ram would definitely know something. That was why Arturia dressed in night clothes that Reinhard gave her for the conference and head out of the mansion. She was allowed to wear Lugnica's night clothes by the Sage Council as well as the whole Knights of Lugnica after she defeated Julius in the duel. Arturia didn't wear her usual battle dress because it was unnecessary and brought a lot of attention to herself. That dress also served as her formal wear since she had no other dress other than that one. She could buy a dress or two, but she preferred the knight uniform over a dress. Reinhard gave her 5 sacred coins this time for her funds. Arturia also thought of getting herself a mount. From what she knew, the ground dragon was a proud creature. They were different from a horse and they certainly ran faster than a horse. Not only that, they had divine protection too. At first, Arturia wanted a white horse. But after hearing what Reinhard had said, she changed her mind and decided to get herself a ground dragon too. When she walked around the town, Arturia noticed a board that attracted the crowd. Arturia was curious about it and decided to approach it. But, when she was approaching the board, the crowd began whispering to each other and made ways for her. She thought that it was strange, but she immediately understood when she saw the board. On the board were the poster and the announcement about the royal selection. The announcement was posted alongside the face of the candidates and Arturia's face was clearly drawn in detail. Hey, isn't that one of the candidates for royal selection? Whispered the crowd. She was wearing a knight attire, so the rumor about her being a knight is true. Then that means she's strong, right? We could depend on her for our future. Not only that, it seems the knight that vowed to her is Reinhard. It seems that she will get backing from the knight squad too. All kinds of whispers were thrown here and there as they talked about Arturia. She had prepared for the information about the royal selection and her identity would be spread to the masses, but she never expected it to be this fast. Arturia was satisfied with what she saw, and she was about to leave and went to Ram's house. But, when she was about to leave, she saw a young man that she knew in the crowd with a rather bad expression on his face. Arturia approached the young man and asked. Subaru? Are you okay? The young man, Subaru, looked at Arturia with his eyes widened in surprise, or rather realization, and muttered. I almost forgot about it. Wasn't she strong? She could help, right? Subaru suddenly lowered his head and shouted, Please. Help me with saving Emilia. His shout attracted the crowd's attention and made Arturia surprised. She looked around and saw the people that gathered around the board were looking at them with interest. This is rather bad for Arturia. She was seen by the crowd with a young man bowed at her. Arturia understood the severity of rumors that were created from misunderstanding. That was why Arturia quickly said. Please raise your head, Subaru. Let's talk in a different place. She made sure that the crowd heard her saying the name of the boy, to show that they knew each other. Subaru raised his head and faced Arturia with a smile on his face. But Arturia realized something. Subaru was suffering. From the instinct that she gained after being transported to this world, she knew that something was wrong with Subaru who stood in front of her. Not only that, there was a nasty aura surrounding Subaru. She felt rather disturbed, no, disgusted with the aura that surrounded Subaru. After getting a nod of understanding from Subaru, Arturia walked to the slum area. The only place that she knew was Reinhard's mansion and Rom's house. Without Reinhard in the mansion, she couldn't carelessly invite Subaru over. So the only choice left was Rom's house. When they arrived in front of Rom's house, Subaru was getting agitated. Arturia didn't understand what happened with Subaru. The boy was strange, he was agitated over nothing. She knew that he had a bad memory in this house, mainly because of Elsa, but he showed an intense reaction. Arturia decided to ignore Subaru's behavior and knocked on the door. After a few seconds, Rom's voice came from beyond the door. "Who is it?" "It's Arturia, Rom. I wanted to borrow the place for a bit, do you mind?" When Arturia said that, the door was opened immediately and Rom greeted Arturia with a smile on his face. "Oh, young miss. What do we have here? How can you hide the fact that you were one of the royal candidates?" "Ha ha ha. Old man Rom. Who are there?" A young girl's voice came from inside the house and after a while, Felt appeared from behind Rom while holding a wooden cup in her hand. When she saw Arturia, she immediately smiled and said, "Oh. What bring you here, Nei-chan?" "I wanted to borrow the place for a while, Felt. I brought someone else that was in trouble." Felt looked behind Arturia after she heard what she said. And, when she saw Subaru she said, "Oh, Nei-chan. You were in trouble." Subaru tried his best to give Felt a smile. But, growing up in the slum, Felt knew how to differentiate between an honest smile and a fake one. That was why Felt looked at Arturia and said, "Feel free to use the place, Nei-chan. It seems Nei-chan was in big trouble." "Thank you, let's enter the house, Subaru." Arturia entered the house and sat on one of the chairs. "Ah," answered Subaru as he followed Arturia and sat on the chair in front of her. After he sat in front of her, Arturia put on a serious face, "So, tell me about it." If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.